whiteboards.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Elevate21, the future cloud powered by Spalding Ridge. My name is Kyle Risch. I'm an associate partner here at Spalding Ridge. And thank you so much for joining this session on agile decision-making through connected planning. We're thrilled to welcome our guest speaker, Ron Dimon. Ron has been designing and building enterprise performance management, or EPM, systems and processes since 1999. He helps organizations design strategic, financial, and operational planning roadmaps and business processes and practices. During the pandemic, and one of the things that he and I talk about, quite often, is his focus on helping clients answer the question, what's next, through scenario thinking and model building. Ron's also an author. He recently published the second edition of his book, very aptly named Connected Planning, a Playbook for Agile Decision Making, which is available on most major platforms, including Amazon and Audible. We've actually had the chance to attend a few of Ron's sessions, and I think that's why we were so excited that he was going to be a part of Elevate21 this year, and why I think you're really going to enjoy the session here today. One last thing I'll mention before I pass it over to Ron. This is a live session, so we highly encourage you to ask us any questions that you have, anything that Ron says. If you want to learn a little bit more about it, please enter it in the chat below, and we'll make sure we leave enough time at the end of the session for Ron to answer those questions. So without further ado, Ron, welcome to Elevate21. Thanks so much for joining, and over to you.
Thanks a lot, Kyle. Many thanks for having me. I'm really glad to be here. I love working with the folks at Spalding Ridge. What I'm hoping to do in the next hour is take you through connected planning as a decision management operating system. So what does that mean? Using connected planning as a platform to not just answer questions, but come up with the right questions, to find out how good we are at answering questions, to figure out how to deploy resources better, how to use our cash and capital and people and product and markets to achieve those performance goals that we said we were up to. And I thought the one way to start is just to think about what's happening in the world as we start at the second half of the fiscal year. There's a lot of I guess, excitement and agita around return to work and the mix between remote and on-site presence, which has such a trickle-on effect to employee and productivity and real estate and delivery and just all the things that organizations are up to. And at the same time, I've noticed in some industries, food and beverage, entertainment, staff shortages, where it's getting more difficult to attract people back into the workforce as doors open up. We've seen so much around the supply chain, from Suez Canal to pantry stocking and stockouts, and a lot of organizations switching their suppliers and where they make and build product. We've seen a lot of different customer behavior and channel behavior and new channels opening up. And with the Delta variant, we don't know what's going to happen in the fall and the winter. We have some ideas, but are we prepared? So all of the mix and what's happening in the second half of 2021 and beyond need some decisions to be made. What are we going to do? What are we going to decide on for attracting and retaining people, for profitable revenue growth, for customer delight, for product quality, for all the things that we're up to as an organization? And I thought what I was going to do was, well, I'll come up with a couple of questions that I'm sure are on top of mind for a lot of people. And the list is infinite. So I just picked out a few representative ones around workforce and real estate and supply chain. We're doing a lot more work on workforce planning around diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is directly related to environmental, social, and governance needs. A lot of organizations understand that consumers want to do business with organizations that they can trust and believe in, and that's trickling over to the B2B world. So just anything you can think of that's a moving part or an always has been or a desired future state requires some sort of decision. And not just making a decision. I'll show you that it's more than that. It's a couple of things that Frank said. One was Accountability. So being held to account for the decisions that you made. I was referring to Frank Calderoni's session earlier today. Or things like empowering employees to make decisions and have that authority to make change in the business. And we'll show you how all that's encompassed in this framework that I describe in my book. The framework you're going to see is it's a management operating system with a focus on better decision making, resource deployment, accountability, and transparency. And I've had the good fortune to help, I think it's around 120 organizations go on this journey, from large internet advertising and search engine companies in Mountain View to small universities in Vermont and everything in between. Organizations are looking for a discipline, not just around the decision-making, but on the accountability and transparency of that. So I find the best way to describe what I'm talking about is to show you, rather than just create another slide and tell you about it. I'm going to show you what that process looks like. So if you'll bear with me, I'm going to take a couple of minutes and heads down and draw the process for you as many of my clients and Spalding Ridge clients use to do a better job of connecting outcomes to actions to results. So what do I mean by outcomes? What do we care about as an organization? What are we up to? What's our top of mind? What's our remit? And a lot of it focuses on profitable revenue growth. So people want to grow now, especially after the pandemic. There's a lot of opportunity to expand into new markets, new product areas, new customer types, and trying to do it profitably. And so that includes decisions around product and service line and mix and pricing and quality and innovation, all the things that attract and retain customers and still have you make your bottom line. So it's also around employee engagement and success. Frank was talking a lot about that based on his book, Upstanding. Creating a culture of rewards and insight and empathy and commitment, and that's what we're going to try to express in this framework. What else do you care about? If you're a heavily asset-focused organization, you care more about asset utilization, asset health, and asset life cycle. What else do we care about? Obviously, we care about customers, attraction and retention. So all the outcomes around that, you can imagine you have hundreds of decisions that you're going to make in the next half that will have some impact this year and next year. So let's say that we start with our outcomes, and that's what we care about. Connected planning as a process consists of 4 cornerstones that answer 4 primary business questions. And the first question we want to answer is, well, given that we said those were our outcomes, what's possible? What's possible in our markets with our products and services in this time of the year, with our customer share of wallet and customer priorities? What's possible? What can we get done? And once we have a good, robust debate and answer that question, what's possible, we're going to want to answer the question, okay, well, given what's possible, who is going to deliver what? Who's going to deliver that revenue growth? Who's going to deliver that asset utilization? Who's going to get customers? Who's going to deliver what, by when, and where in the world, through what channel and in what territory and what geography? So we've asked what's possible. And once we've answered that, we got to figure out, well, who's going to do it and by when? And then off we go and we do what we do as a customer. We serve our customer, what we do as a business, we serve our customers and attract and retain markets and employees, and we make good products and services. And then once that's running, we got to ask ourselves another question. We got to ask ourselves, well, where are we right now? We got to know, how are we doing based on what we said we wanted to do? And then I think hopefully I'll spend a lot of time on the next question, which most of us don't answer. And that's the why. Why did we get what we got? If we underachieved and we missed our number, what happened? What was the root cause, or what was the reason? Are we bad at making decisions? Do we make some bad assumptions? Did things change in our market and in the world to change our results? So we want to get that question nailed down. And you'll see the value of connecting these 4 questions in one place. And that's the sort of aha moment I'm hoping for. Okay, So let's jump into the first question. What's possible? The fastest, no, the most effective way I've experienced to answer that question is by building a model. So we build a model of our organization, of our marketplace, of our competition, of our product ecosystem, of our channels. We build that model that lets us engage in a debate about what's possible. You know, it's very hard to get a whole organization behind a target or a goal if there hasn't been some inclusion of many voices in that conversation. So we're talking about building a model of the business that's both, or that's strategic, financial, and operational in nature, not just financial. You know, when I first started in this world in 99, it was all about a 3-year plan. That was strategic modeling. And you had 10 line items in the P&L, and that was it. That was your strategic plan. And I hope I don't sound too incredulous, but some of my customers still do that. Now what we're talking about is bigger, better, more dimensional, including operational drivers of the business, including detailed data that we have access to so that our model can learn about how to be more effective. So what happens, what do you need in a model? If we're going to build a model of the business to answer the question, what's possible, what's in there? So let's have a look. I like to think about the business by function. So, you know, there's not just one answer for what goes into a model, but one of the first components of a model are the drivers. And if I think about our, you know, your sales organization, it could be simply volume and price are the key drivers of delivering results in sales. In marketing, it could be your brand, and it could be the number of events you're having. In your channel and ecosystems, it could be partner quality, or who knows, maybe rewards and spiffs for the channel. That's how you get success. On the product side, it's going to be all about quality and innovation and feature functionality fit and customer delight and all those good things. Customer success, where else is customer satisfaction live? That's a huge driver, as are things like upsell and cross-sell. They live sometimes in post-sales support. So that's a key driver of value. In the people side, it's productivity. It's acquire to hire. So it's finding the right people, the right skills, and putting them in the right job. And on the finance side, some of the key drivers are the line items of the P&L, balance sheet, and cash flow. So those are just to give you an idea, the amount or the number and types and kinds of data that can go into a model to build out an approximation of our business to answer the question, what's possible? Models are getting more sophisticated. They're getting more granular. They have more drivers than we've ever had before. Some of them have external data. We never used to do that in our 1999 3-year plan. We really wouldn't get granular on competitive prices or competitive landscape or market share or total, even just something simple as total addressable market. So we're bringing more external data into our models. We also want to surface and document and debate our assumptions. They're changing rapidly, our assumptions. We're making assumptions today about return to work based on health and safety. And if things don't go the way that we think they're going to go in the fall or the winter or next spring, we're going to have to change our assumptions, especially around our workforce. And the other one I like to make sure that we capture in our models are all of the constraints that we know about. So, you know, what's our capital footprint look like? What's our borrowing power? What's the bottleneck in production? What's the time to acquire time and cost to acquire a customer? If we could put all this learning and understanding and knowledge of the business in this model, we're going to do a much better job of approximating the future and answering the question, what's possible? So far, so good? Good. let's go on. So what happens? We have a model, we've debated it, and everyone says, you know what, yes, we can get 5% revenue growth this year, and we can improve profitability by 3 points, and we can attract and retain 100% of our open headcounts for our employees, and we can improve our asset utilization by 10%. And we can attract and retain 1,000 new customers, or whatever the targets are. That's what the model is going to give us, those targets. And they've been shown to be doable because we've run the model to ask the question, what's possible? So that's what happens out of modeling. The targets are generated. It doesn't even matter if you're a top-down or a bottoms-up or a both and meet in the middle planning type of organization. It's still good to build that model to validate where you're at and what's possible. So then the next thing we want to do is answer the question, okay, if we agree it's 5% revenue growth, who's going to deliver on that 5% revenue growth? Using what products and channels, in what month and quarter, at what price and margin? And so to do that, we have to do all of our plans. When I think about revenue plan, I'm talking about a sales plan and sales forecast, but this could also easily include our supply chain plan and our production plan and our product plan and our workforce plan, just all the kinds of planning that we do. One of the first things that happens in a plan to answer the question, who's going to deliver what by when, is we have to cascade that plan down throughout the organization. So every organization is different. Every industry is different. How you cascade might be different. Yet again, it might be different in different business units. So the way I like to think about that difference of how we cascade business plans down is through dimensionality. What are the dimensions of our business? So in sales, I might cascade that down through my product line group, or through my customer type group, or through my geography. Yet in marketing, I might have a different set of dimensions, and I might cascade my targets down by channel, or also by product line and geography. So you can see how I cascade depends on which part of the business I'm talking about, and I need to keep all of those dimensions in sync. Let's use a very simplistic one that many of my clients have. They start off at the business unit level, and then they go down to product group and geography. So let's say my target is 5% revenue growth. I'm going to cascade that down to each of my business units. Each of the business units is going to cascade it down to each product group, and then each product group is going to cascade it down to their geography, to their territory. And what always happens is somewhere down here at the lowest level of the organization, somebody sticks up their hand and says, well, I can't deliver 5% revenue growth in Florida with these products in this business unit because I have too many open headcount for sales. I haven't hired enough salespeople. So I have a constraint that we haven't really thought about when we tried to hand me my target. So I want to learn that constraint. I want to take that open headcount constraint, and I want to do two things. I want to cascade. I want to consolidate my plan back up to the top. And that's where we're going to find out that there's a 5% shortfall from that geography and that product group. And so I begin a process of rebalancing, don't I? When I come back and there's a little bit of negotiation, I come back and say, well, Florida can't make the 5% this quarter. Ohio, can you pick it up? And they'll agree. There's a negotiation until we finally get top of house 5% revenue growth in our plan. What doesn't happen, and what we hope happens more in a connected planning world, is that constraint back here down at the granular level of detail, this open headcount constraint, also flows back into the model. So my planning process is going to feed my modeling process, so I get better at trying to predict the future and trying to answer the question, what's possible? And it can all be done automatedly and with the right dimensions and the right level of granularity and all the good things that you want your data to do. But it's capturing that knowledge of the organization that's new and key. Very few organizations do a really good job of that. So and then the other thing to think about as we create these plans, sales and workforce plans and supply chain plans, is to think about them by business function as well. So again, in the sales function, it's usually the forecast. It might be my territory and quota plan. It might be my comp plan. In marketing, it's going to be my event plan or my marketing spend plan, or maybe my my co-brand plan. In the ecosystems, it'll be my channel plan. In product, it'll be my product plan, my new product introduction roadmap, maybe. In customer success, it's going to be my utilization plan. In HR, it's the whole thing in all of my workforce plan, from hire to retire, including succession plan, skill plan, any kind of other planning you can think about. And in finance, it's usually again, P&L, balance sheet, and cash flow. And maybe I have some sort of foreign currency model in there as well. So you can start thinking functionally about all those plan types, and yet agree that they need to cascade throughout the organization, consolidate back up, and those constraints ought to be caught. Okay, so this is where decisions have been made. The first two boxes at the top of this diagram are where decisions get made. So it's where we actually commit the business. There are very few other places, especially in systems, where commitments are recorded other than a planning system. The only other one that comes to mind is like an OKR system, or your objectives and key results system, which is pretty much driven by the plan anyway. So we commit to the plan, and then off we go as a business. And I know we have a bunch of different kinds of businesses on the phone. So maybe you make products and services. Maybe you're a consumer focused business. Maybe you're a mining business. Who knows? However, you still do what everybody does in business. You acquire customers and you sell them products and services through channels in geographies using your people and the business units. So you have all of these, all the dimensionality of the business that's going to generate a ton of data. So while you're off and executing on the business, you're going to generate a lot of data, more than I have ever seen in my career. So for example, again, functionally thinking, in sales, it's the CRM data. In marketing, maybe CRM, maybe your content management system or others. In your ecosystems, back to CRM, or maybe a service cloud. In product lifecycle management system, maybe your quality control system. In HR, it's your workdays and your HRIS systems. And in finance, it's usually not just one ERP, but it's a bunch of ERPs now. So we have to collect all that data, and we have to make it into some usable format. So we transform that data. However we do that, some folks use a data warehouse or a data lake or a data mart or a data hub, and you turn that data into some consolidated, useful information so that I can answer the question, where am I right now? So here we're talking about all of the data visualizations and reporting that you do. So this could be your variance reporting. I think that's the first one to come up. Your management reporting. Any other kind of reporting that you're thinking of doing has to show up for us to start to think about, well, how is the efficacy of our decision? How'd we do? And either one or, well, I guess you have three things could happen. You could make your numbers spot on, in which case you're brilliant and you've got the best planning insight and forecast accuracy in the business, or you miss your number, which is usually what happens in a particular geography or in a product group or in a particular area of the business. And so one of two things happens. We go back into the planning process and we re-forecast and rebalance. So we say we've got a shortfall this month, got to go make it up if we're going to make our quarter number. Let's make sure we're connected back to the planning process up ahead, and let's do that. Or interestingly enough, what happens if you exceed your number? So then what are you going to do? Who asks the question, wow, we really, did an excellent job at sales in that quarter with that product and that geography. What did we learn, and where can we replicate that success somewhere else? So in order to do that, not only do we have to find out where we are, we have to drill down into the details and understand why we got what we got, so that we can ask the question, why? And so when we drill into the details, we look for a couple of things. We look for root causes as to why we achieved or underachieved. We want to look for trends and patterns, outliers. What else? We want to benchmark. Maybe we benchmark same store sales or like geographies or similar product groups, and we do some internal benchmarking. Maybe we do some external benchmarking. But the point is, we drill down into that detail so that we can get better at making better decisions. And then what happens here is, I think nirvana for a connected planning organization right here, one of your, well, pretty much anybody in your organization that gets to play in this process has some new insight that they hadn't had before. Something happens when they're doing data analytics or predictive analytics or machine-led analytics, that they get some insight. You know what? We're having such a hard time making our number, not just because that one location in Florida with open headcount, but everywhere. So we notice there might be a correlation between open headcount and sales. Kind of makes sense to us, doesn't it? Let's ask that question of the data. So I have that insight. I asked myself that question. I want to go back and prove it by going back to the data. So I want to, in a self-serve way, hopefully, go back to that store and cache of useful information and ask it, well, what's the correlation between open headcount and sales in every geography, in every product line? And how has that changed over time? So that I can have a hypothesis and either prove it or find out if it's a valuable hypothesis to chase. And then the other thing that's going to happen is not only do I have an insight, but I might have an idea about how to solve that problem. And so going back to my outcomes, knowing that our goal is 5% profitable revenue growth, what do I do next? I build another model. I want to come back and say, okay, this model is called, what if we increase our recruiting spend by 10%? So, because we think, my insight is that if we have less open headcount and it's filled faster, we make our sales number. So what if we invest 10% more in recruiting? And so we have a debate about that because it's in a model based on data. And then we all agree, yes, we're gonna invest $1 million in recruiting. So I have a new target back over here, and now I have a new recruiting plan. And I'm going to cascade that down through the organizations. And then guess what? I'm going to come back to where I was before and say, okay, how's that recruiting plan impacting our top number? What's the correlation? What's the effectiveness of that decision that I just made? And so you can see it's a never-ending cycle. And this cycle from the 4 quadrants is speeding up, and it's getting more granular. And we're including more kinds and types of data. The questions are coming fast and furious for that, from leadership, from our board, from our shareholders and stakeholders and customers. And so the ability to automate this whole function gives you some competitive advantage of answering these questions faster and giving more insight to folks throughout your organization. And if you're like most of our clients, like Kyle and I have been working on for years, they already do some of these things now. So some of them already do some modeling. Maybe it's in Excel, maybe it is the 3-year P&L. Certainly everybody has some sort of planning. Maybe it's sales forecast and a supply chain plan. Maybe you do a good job at S&OP planning, but maybe not so much on the workforce side. And maybe you already have a really good job on your business intelligence side. You get the great reporting you want. And you probably do, when you have a little bit of opportunity to do some analytics after the fact, and probably in Excel or your business intelligence system. What connected planning does that's different, that hasn't happened, or it's just happening over the last 5 years, is taking all that data and all the in-memory capability in cloud systems to very quickly, automatically consolidate this data, pivot it, slice and dice it, drill into it, create scenarios in ways that we haven't been able to do before. And so the value for you is to put this whole process in one platform When it's all on the same platform, then you get to do some pretty neat things. You get to have common data sources. I've been in too many quarterly business reviews to name where you argue about where you got your number from versus what you're going to do about it. So now if you have a common platform for the same numbers, you get to stop arguing about the numbers and you get to argue what to do about it. Common rules for how you transform the data, common algorithms, common machine learning insights, common, even something as simple as common data definitions. I still have clients that are arguing about the definition of a full-time equivalent. So now you get to have all that commonality and you get to be singing off of one sheet and you're all aligned. And the way I speak about it to some clients is with a common business language. You now get to speak in terms of variance and believability and trust and efficacy, all those great things. So let me think about this for 1 second. Kyle, are there any questions that have come up now that I could take a second and answer before I carry on?
Yeah, Ron, I think the one question we did have come in was just, around the kind of visuals here when we think of connected planning and the agile decision making that, hey, all this looks a little complicated. Why don't we just kind of keep it the standard status quo, the way we've done that in the past? I guess, do you have any feedback or, maybe the point you're getting to now is just, how do we kind of simplify all this?
Well, business is complex itself, and things are changing rapidly. And we have new suppliers and new customer types and new products, new competitors. Think about Amazon getting in your business tomorrow. You have a new competitor. Now, what are you going to do? So business is by nature more complex now, Kyle. So our job is to simplify it. And I think the complexity in our customers' organizations comes from just trying to stitch all this stuff together. Multiple data sources, multiple integrations, multiple data warehouses and versions of the truth, multiple planning systems, multiple BI systems. That complexity can be reduced. We can now get onto one common planning system. I have clients that have removed 5 or 6 different legacy technologies because they could put sales forecasting in the same place that they could put workforce planning, in the same place that they could put product planning. So it could all be in one place, one user interface, one common set of business language, and as I said before. So I think that, of course, if you look at my drawing and my handwriting, it still looks complex, but the idea of one common platform is a simplification play. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Kyle, have you had clients where you've been able to retire legacy planning systems after putting everybody on one platform?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you think of, the big one, maybe they're using Excel, right? Like that they're able to kind of sunset that product when you get on Anaplan. I think the big thing we see with a platform like Anaplan is, and then when we talk about connected planning is really, how do we break down those silos like you're talking about on here? So sales is using one tool, finance is using another, supply chain's using another. The fact that we can get everyone on one singular platform and knock down those silos is exactly like you said. Business is complicated, but we're making it less complicated with Anaplan.
So you bring up a good point, and I'm going to pivot for a second to drill into that. There's a tool I use that was invented by Simon Tucker at Anaplan, and I think it's one of the most brilliant things I've ever done to address this problem of silos. The first thing I try to do is I put the entire business on one sheet of paper. So again, I'm still thinking functionally, and this map looks different for every business and every industry. But the point is to put the primary business functions, not necessarily departments, but the outcomes in 6, 7, 8 columns. Everybody has sales and marketing, and probably has a ecosystem and a channel, product or service development, customer success, and HR. And then I also stratify the business into 3 layers. The strategic layer, because different decisions are made at the strategic layer than they are at the operational layer, or they might be, and they're related. So what I love to do with clients is, first of all, put the business on one sheet of paper, and then have a conversation with them for what drives value. In 2022, who's your customer? What's your price point? What's your What's your operating margin? What's your R&D spend as a percent of revenue? So to try and put themselves out into the future, and then start to think about what drives value. And usually customers start talking about, well, it's it's more that we sell to customers, the better. Well, what drives that? How do you get more product to customer? And so they might tell me, oh, it's all about creating new feature functions in my products and having a reason to either upgrade or attract or go off your legacy system. So the more feature functionality I put in my product, the more volume I'm going to generate. Okay, terrific. What generates feature function? I just do this. It's a secret in the consulting world called 5 whys. You just keep asking the question why 5 times, but this is couched a little bit differently, a little bit more from a business KPI perspective. So the third why for feature function is, well, what drives that? And then I'll get my customers will tell me, oh, it's always, really highly skilled engineers that we hire, and they become innovative and they build great features. So all of a sudden I've created this connection from skills training and skills planning to revenue growth. And it's not something that we usually think about. And the more I have this conversation, the more of these drivers get layered on to how they impact other areas of the business. And very quickly, my client sees, well, I can't think about silos. There's no silo. My silo, my business function in the marketing team spans every other business function, and my business function in HR touches every other business function. And when they visualize this, number one, they go, oh, this should be an enterprise-wide undertaking. This shouldn't be a marketing solution. And 2, they go, look at all these interconnections. We should probably track those and measure those and plan for those and analyze them and get better at them. And so that's sort of the one recommendation I make for people that are getting on this journey of connected planning and really bringing the whole organization together on that one platform, is to have this what drives value conversation and put it on a single sheet of paper so that they can go around through the organization and enroll other leaders and executives, and managers and analysts in why we would want to look at planning and analytics more holistically.
And Ron, we did have another question come in, and I think it's a really good one here. But they're asking, how can we best think about connected planning when there are multiple planning solutions within the company? For example, Anaplan for finance, Coupa for procurement, workforce planning, and Workday. So really specifically, if there's not a route, an ideal situation, you're using Anaplan for all those, a lot of that. But if you have kind of chief support for each separate technology, what's the best way to think about connected planning there?
Well, first of all, somebody has to own that problem. Again, back to my buddy Simon, he likes to think about a chief planning officer as a role to corral all that together. But that's good, and that's organizational and structural, and that will help make planning successful. But before you even do that, you have to show stakeholders what's in it for them. Why would they even bother? Why go out? Workday is great. I can do my headcount planning. But what happens when I start to do what ifing? What if I think about, well, what if I don't get the return to work? And also let me add the dimension of remote and local working. All of a sudden, my older planning system and some of the larger systems, it's an act of IT to reconfigure. I got to redimensionalize. I got to load different data. I got to run the ETL. In a connected planning solution like Anaplan, that's more business led. So now the business can start to add new dimensions to how they plan and not have to wait for all of the connectivity and data sleuthing and work like that. That's one what's in it for me. The other what's in it for me, though, more on the business management side, is results. If I can show in one planning system an uptick in forecast accuracy of 1%, it's huge. Think of if I improve my forecast accuracy by 1%, think about your own organizations. What's the uptick in discretionary spend? And if you have an uptick in discretionary spend, what can you do with that? In Frank's session, I was going to ask him the question, if somebody handed you $1 million in your business today, how would you spend it? And that's like forecast accuracy driving discretionary spend. Now I have a new bucket of money that I can invest in people or product or customer or channel or leadership or whatever it is. And so that's the big what's in it for me, is showing them some value on moving the needle on these drivers. And the best way to do that is to interconnect them. Another question, Kyle?
Yeah, so I think another question that's coming in is, and you kind of mentioned a few of the customers before, but like, who's currently doing this idea of connected planning or really putting this into action? Kind of a two-part question. So who's currently doing it? But when's the right time to think about connected planning? So some of the folks on the call here, I'm sure, are getting close and they like the idea of the connected planning, but maybe think they're a little too far out. So what do what's your suggestion in terms of timing to think about connected planning?
Yeah, well, the quick answer to all of it is it's a journey. Everybody's on the journey. In the first edition of my book, I had a maturity model, and it talks about a low level of maturity for planning and analytics. Some organizations are just there. I mean, they're so fast and furious, and maybe a commodity type business. They know their commodity in, commodity out. They know their mark to market. They know what they're doing. They don't really spend a lot of time on forecasting because they don't have to. Whereas other organizations are getting blindsided by new competitors, new products, supply chain disruption, return to work issues, that they sit back and go, we've got a real problem. We should not be caught like this again. So the word "it's a journey" is kind of a little bit of a cop out, but let me give you a better answer for if many people on the call are like most of my clients. Is we do such a bad job of modeling. We really do. We do not take advantage of all of the data and all of the tools and algorithms and patterns that come from machine learning and all that really good stuff to start getting even better and better at scenario planning and what if modeling. So what if 10% of my workforce does not return to work? What if the next release of the iPhone renders my product obsolete? So what if I'm forced into obsolescence? What if my patent's going to expire? So just anything that you can think of, building that muscle around scenario planning is a great place to start. I write a little bit about it on how to create a scenario thinking culture, how to start doing some pilots around scenario planning and scenario modeling. And then what the inputs and the outputs are. Gartner just wrote a nice little article on LinkedIn around a methodology I use. It used to be called PESEL, now it's called something else. Brookings Institute has some really great scenarios out of the box for cost of capital changes, employee productivity changes, price pressure, just all the things you can think of. If your organization gets into the habit of, whether it's monthly or fortnightly or however you do it, thinking about anticipating what's going to happen in the future and reducing the surprises like the pandemic caused for so many of us, then we get, we're more agile to compete. And then that scenario thinking and that readiness enrolls other parts of the organization. Oh, do a scenario for me now. Let's do a marketing scenario. I have a brand disaster issue, or a celebrity comes out against us, or our social media feed tanks, or whatever those great scenarios are. All of them are ripe to do in a connected planning platform, where you pile on drivers and data and assumptions and constraints and machine learning patterns. One more thing about that, Kyle, that a lot of clients have been pivoting to lately is the notion of a competency center or center of excellence. So you can call it a planning center of excellence, or an insight center of excellence, or outcome center of excellence, whatever you want to call that. But getting a group together that's comprised of some seconded resources from IT and finance and lines of business that rotate into and out of the organization. This center really quickly comes up with better practices for what's the right next plan type to attack, what's the right next legacy system to retire, and things like that. I have one in particular that's very good at acquisition integration. Their business model is acquisition. And as they acquire, there's a new ERP, or there's a new data set, there's new dimensionality or new other systems. So they're very adept at taking the core of what data runs the business and assimilating it into the center of excellence and then running with it from there. So they have a competitive advantage to turn around new cross-selling opportunities, new synergies, new brand changes on the fly.
Yeah, I love that idea, the center of excellence that you mentioned there, Ron. Like, just, with some of our customers that we've seen and like gone through an implementation, and now, we always say Anaplan is a business owned tool. But those folks that go and set up that center of excellence, they're really owning the tool and really expanding and getting the most use out of it, very specifically to their business. I always think that that's really, really cool to see.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, so
what else?
Another question that we had is, okay, so, what advice would you give to some of the folks on the call that say, hey, I love the idea of connected planning. I get it. I see it. But now I need to go convince my other team members. So maybe they're starting with the use case in finance, and, I need to be better connected with my sales team. I need to be connected better to my supply chain, HR, et cetera. What advice would you give, or maybe what have you seen work really well where, folks are going in and having to make that kind of internal business case for connected?
Well, that's the answer. The answer is the business case. If you have a compelling business case to enroll part of the organization into connected planning, that's what you want to do. So I'll give you a quick example of how I've seen it done well in the past. I've had, it was an agribusiness. And they said, if we could take 1% out of SG&A, that gives us, whatever the number was, $500 million in recurring benefit. What's that worth to you? Mr. or Ms. Executive, what's that worth to you? And so then the question is, well, that's, it's worth a lot. I would invest $250,000 to get $500 million return. And the question is, well, how do I reduce SG&A by 1%? And just by improving forecast accuracy around spend, or embodying rules around spend, or just shining a light on it, just having it in part of your quarterly business review, and rolling up your sleeves and looking into the, going and drilling into the details to find out about root causes of why our SG&A spend isn't where it should be. All of those activities will improve that driver by at least 1%. And so I just go down the line. If I could give 1% in revenue growth, what's that going to give us? And then how do we do it? And so I just keep going down the line. I just go down the P&L usually, or I say around asset utilization. I do the same for currency impact and hedging. Anything that you can think about as a key driver of value for your business. I start off with this 1% solution, and the notion of more measurement, more scrutiny, more planning, more managing of assumptions, the closer you get to that 1% impact. And then there are some organizations that have this notion called 10X, and they want to do 10% out of SG&A or 10% revenue growth. And that requires a lot more coordination and more programmatic decision making. But if it's in the framework, it's all aligned and orchestrated.
Great. And one last question I see that's coming in here is that, for some of our clients, or I guess for this example here, for some of those companies that are in hyper growth mode, maybe they're very dependent on Excel. It's a very flexible tool. It's what they're comfortable with. What's your thought or your advice to them on, from like a scalability standpoint? When's the right time to move off of Excel into a solution kind of like Anaplan?
Well, scalability hits the needle on the head when you're speaking to CIO, for sure. So you can be more scalable, more secure, more governed when you get off of Excel. That's great. It's when I sit beside an analyst and I say, okay, there's your beautiful cash flow analysis spreadsheet. By the way, let's go from monthly to daily now. And then their head explodes. And then I say, well, what if it looked like this? And it used to be me. Now it's not me anymore. It's a better Anaplanner. We'll take a monthly cash flow model and turn it into a daily cash flow model in 3-5 minutes and show the analyst. And that's when their head explodes. And they go, okay, well, that's what I want to do. So what's in it for them at the tactical level is usually productivity. And what's in it for them at the executive level is usually scalability.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think that's all the questions that we have on our end, Ron. So thank you so much for your time today. I hope everyone got as much out of this as I did. So Ron, thank you so much for joining us at Elevate 21 this year.
My pleasure. Thanks, Kyle. Thanks, everybody.
And then for those attending the session, if you have any further questions that you'd like to ask Ron, or you want to learn a little bit more about connected planning, please feel free to reach out. So thank you all again for attending the session on agile decision-making through connected planning. And we hope you enjoy the rest of Elevate 21.